Welcome to Horticulture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture.
Well, welcome, friends. How's everybody doing?
Good. I love
Very
your
good.
soft intros, Brett. Love it. Because, I mean, if it was Alexis, it would have been screeching in on two tires.
Yeah,
I
yelling,
love it.
yelling
I
at
love it.
everybody.
Sparks.
Yeah, both of them work very well. Very well. Both intros
we
work
have
very well.
a yin and yang energy.
I love it.
between the two of us.
It
Yeah,
Complimentary
It
even.
balances out
we've been
well.
working some on some of these events, and Alexis is the person who will make sure that everybody's fed, that they've got a place to go to the bathroom, that people get paid. And I'm
Logistics.
more on the what's the conceptual,
Human
what are we
nature.
doing here with the program? People who've listened to the podcast for a while are not surprised to hear this, but should there be pyrotechnics? Would it be too much for one of us to be lowered in on a crane, as part of the? So, but yeah,
It's
we're
part of the theater of the event.
Mhm.
Yes.
she was just remarking the other day about the complementary nature, and I think part of hey everybody, welcome back to Horticulture. My smooth 70s radio DJ voice comes out, and Alexis is much more of a shock jock, I think.
Yeah. She's right there up front. She's in the front row.
Yeah, we're joined by a guest today. John, you want to introduce yourself, and then I have a question for everybody, but I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself first.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Duvall. So by daytime, I'm actually a horticulturalist at Eastern Kentucky University, but at night, I'm the president of the Kentucky Maple Syrup Association, and that's what I'm here today is to talk to you about maple syrup.
We're excited about it.
Yeah.
By day and by night, it was giving
I
me
know.
Batman.
It's like alter ego. It's like superhero stuff.
Not the hero
I mean,
maple
deserve,
syrup
but the
cake.
hero we need.
Yes,
exactly
it is maple syrup, so it's got superhero status in my book any day.
That's
so.
right. Well, I have a question. It's a little more actually topically related than we usually do. I hope longtime listeners will forgive me for tying it back to the topic and not just ranting on about candy corn for the first 10 minutes of the episode.
It's that time of year to do that again.
We'll make fun of it at a later date.
In good time. I'm curious what you all. So maple syrup is the topic we're going to talk about today in a variety of ways. What do you, when you think of maple syrup, maybe when you taste it or you smell it or whatever, what do you associate it with? What's something that you very specifically associate with maple syrup?
Goodness.
And John, you could feel free to answer too. We will let you go whenever you're ready, but we'll take the pressure off by saying, Jessica, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. This may sound weird, but my mother-in-law, because she is from Vermont, and so we are very pure maple syrup people, right, in our household. And the different, because you can get the different colors. I don't know the terminology. I hope to learn that today about the different grades of maple syrup, but I associate that with her and her family. My grandparents are originally from Western New York, and they talked about cooking their own maple syrup when I was a kid. So that's what I associated with. And so and there's always a great debate at my in-laws about, she can't believe that two of her sons like the store-bought maple syrup over the pure stuff. So that's always a comical debate that happens, or she's ashamed that they don't like pure maple syrup.
That is not maple syrup.
Well, there's some real beef. There's some real beef particularly I think between Vermont and New Hampshire about who makes better maple syrup. And
oh man,
that's high stakes.
A northern throwdown.
You got the two northeastern wedge states, wedge-shaped states going head to head in the maple syrup game. What about you, Ray?
When I think of maple syrup, I guess I don't know. I always think of the woods. And I think of the fall time of the year, even though that's kind of out of season for a lot of the activities for making maple syrup. But in the fall, about this time before the leaves would come off the trees, to make sure that we were tapping the trees that we absolutely wanted, we'd mark trees when we would make it. So it's like all things fall to me. Maybe it's because it's a sweetener, and I think of sorghum and maple syrup and all that stuff. I think of the woods mainly. When I think of maple syrup, it's like a taste of the woods to me, and trees and hills and all the fun things associated with that. It just instantly, it's a fall time thing in my brain, and woods thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, John, I mean, I know that you obviously have a lot of reference points for maple, but maybe stepping away from the presidential role or the other, the roles of the organization and other stuff, just
Right.
as a person, what do you associate with maple syrup?
Well, I guess I would associate kind of two things. One, instead of fall, I would take a more of winter because that's the season for maple syrup. That's when you're actually doing it.
Yeah.
And the other thing would be like, our heritage, our ancestors who really got started on making maple syrup, hundreds of years ago, and the art kind of got lost, and I think it's kind of picking back up again. At least in Kentucky. They've been doing up in Vermont, that area, for a long, long time. But in Kentucky, they used to make it quite a bit, and then that art just almost got lost, and it's kind of coming back.
Yeah. My memory of maple is it's not really syrup per se, and it's certainly not the pure version that Jessica's really pushing her agenda of pure maple syrup
Yeah,
on
it's a big
display.
to do
Purist.
in our family. So
But for me, there's these little maple flavored candies it's like a maple covered cashew, and my dad loved those things. And I was just like, especially as a kid, you're like, what in the heck? Like, it's like the Werther's original kind of effect of like, is this just something you pass a certain age and then you like these? And I like them now, but and I keep Kleenexes and Werther's originals in all my sweater pockets, and I've graduated to that level. But I could still smell, like, we go on road trips, and my dad would have them, and I could still smell that candy now. But before any of that happens, we have to collect and make the maple syrup. And so what I'm going to ask you, John, before we jump into the other stuff we're going to cover, is an impossible task. Can you give us the elevator pitch or the elevator spiel? Maybe it's a long elevator, maybe it goes to the top of the Sears Tower, for what is the process of making maple syrup for someone who's not really initiated into it? Like, what does that look
Right.
like in a very high level? Like, what are we doing?
You could kind of simplify it into steps. So first step would be, of course, tapping the tree, then collecting the sap. And what a lot of people don't realize is what it looks like when it comes out. Everybody thinks, when you tap that tree, it's going to come out looking brown like syrup. Well, it doesn't. It looks like water. It looks like crystal clear water. So you go from tap to collect to boil, and that's the long process. That's what takes a long time. To filter to bottle. So those are kind of the steps of making maple syrup. You go from tap to collect to boil to filter to bottle. That's kind of the simple version and each step has its own process, and you do it different steps throughout the whole season. But that's the simple way of explaining it.
Yeah,
Out of
that's
those
awesome.
steps, yeah, it's I was just going to say, people would get excited about going to workshops. We did some really basic, like, community workshop type thing. Everybody was so excited. We want to be involved in every step of the process, until we got to boiling it. About 2 hours in, they're like, okay, we'll come back to us later. It absolutely, because we were not set up with any kind of commercial equipment or anything. And it took us a good while to boil, down. And I'm sure you'll get into that and the ratios and stuff. But yeah, everybody was super excited until we got to that boiling, and then they saw what was going on there, and then they were like, okay, we'll get with you later. This is taking a while.
Yeah, I've kind of got a story about the first time I boiled. A friend of mine had a farm down in Berea, Kentucky, and he let me tap some trees, and there's a process called RO, reverse osmosis, and that's a whole other subject. But it's a way to kind of cut down your cook time. So I froze a lot of my sap, and I waited till a really nice day. It was actually kind of March Madness season, so we set up our cooker outside. Got our TV set up, and we just made like a whole day of it, keeping the fire going. And it was getting late, so we had to start putting out spotlights so we could see what we're doing. And we're kind of getting down to the end, and I'm watching it closely. And his parents have been there all day, so he's saying goodbye to his parents. I turn around for 2 seconds, and when I go back to my syrup, it just foams over the pan and it just goes all over the ground. And we're just standing there like,
No.
Oh gosh. After we've been there for like 6
All
hours
that work.
cooking
Yeah.
all the
I
sap I had from that
cannot
season.
imagine. Yeah.
And so all we could do was just grab our leather gloves and try to lift that tray up off that fire
Yeah.
as quick as we could to save what we could. And so that first year, I ended up with 1 jar of maple syrup.
You
That one
know,
jar, though, that's a lot of
That
work.
that's very
that
familiar
1 jar.
story in my life as well. My husband did that with sorghum. His first year of doing
Yeah.
sorghum, cooked it all day long, and it had a little burnt taste to it in the end, and it got about like 1 jar
Yeah.
as well. But things only got
Jessica,
better, right? And I'm
did I
sure
get
for
some of
you
that?
as
It
well.
was fine. It was fine. Even
You
burnt
got the
sorghum or
good
burnt
stuff
syrup.
now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got the good stuff. But yeah.
You
So
market that as a
people who make maple syrup, though, we call ourselves sugar makers. So we like to say you're not an official sugar maker until you mess up once.
Yeah.
So that first year, I guess I was official sugar maker because I messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were on the you were just on the accelerated track.
Yeah, you
Exactly.
started right in on the learning early. I had guys tell me, they're like, "Hey, listen, don't finish that on wood fire." I'm like, "Well, why not?" And then I figured out real quick why, because like you said, you're doing an emergency maneuver lifting a hot pan. And then I
Yeah.
went to propane, and then I was like, "Oh, maybe if I finish it on the stove." So yeah, there's a lot of art and science to finishing
Exactly.
that stuff. My goodness, but it's an awesome process though. But
Yeah.
yeah, I learned the hard way as well. Wood
You
fire.
mentioned winter. So what time of winter are we in that this would be happening usually in Kentucky?
Well, in Kentucky, yeah. So usually in Kentucky, we start tapping our trees in January. You could probably start in December, but there's kind of a window of when you want to tap your tree. Basically, once you tap your tree, you have 6 to 8 weeks to collect your sap, and then the tree will heal itself. So that 6 to 8 week window, you kind of want to base on what the weather's going to be. When you're going to get the below freezing days, or below freezing at night and above freezing during the day. And you're looking for when you're going to get the most consistent of those type of days during the winter. So in Kentucky, primarily we've been tapping sometime in January. Then our season is running through February, and by March, the season's basically over. Our trees start forming their little buds, for the spring, start filling with water, and at that point, the chemistry and the sap changes, and unfortunately, the season's over. But like up in Vermont, in that area, they're just getting started about the time we're finishing.
Oh, cool.
Their season's much longer, I'm assuming, up there because of the colder weather, more consistent, or how their seasons just
their seasons, it's about the same. They all last, about 6 to 8 weeks. Once you tapped, the tree will naturally just heal itself.
Yeah.
6 to 8 weeks. It's just they have to wait a little bit longer because they're so cold. They have to wait till they start coming out of that frozen time, where ours fluctuates so much. We can have a few days where it's below freezing, and then 2 days later it's above 60, and that's not good for syrup, unfortunately.
And can that shut your season down? I mean, if it stays, if those fluctuations are too great, can that impact your season?
It can, because then you start getting little microbes in all your lines, and it starts changing
Gotcha.
The syrup taste. But also, when you get those warmer temperatures, then the tree can heal itself a lot quicker. But there has been times, where we get those 60-degree days, but then it'll go back below freezing, and so your season can continue. Our weather down here is just strange. You never know if we're going to have
Right.
those freezing nights, or are we going to have an early spring?
Right.
That's the story of horticulture in Kentucky, where as a transition state, transition zones, my goodness, we get northern weather and southern weather. It depends on which day it is. So yeah, that makes sense.
It reminds me of the sweet corn production band as it moves up throughout the season. You get the Floridas and the Georgias producing first, and then it's gradually coming up, and then Kentucky. But us in the middle, sometimes it's late, sometimes it's early, sometimes the tomatoes are ripening, sometimes they aren't.
Yeah.
Well,
so what were you gonna say, Jess?
I was going to say, well, one, how cool are trees to think that it can heal that quickly in that amount of time? Because we always think about trees being slower with things. But when you're talking about your trees that you're tapping, Mostly sugar maples. Is that what you're going for? Because I've heard of sometimes they've tapped red maples. Uh, I've known some other people to tap other trees as well to try to get some of that syrup from. So is it primarily sugar maples you're going after?
Well, it's sugar and red maples. In Kentucky, the most populated tree naturally is the red maple. But we do have native sugar maples as well. They're just a lot more red. And up in the Northeast, I guess they kind of look down on the red maple. They're strictly sugar maples, but it has a really good taste too. And a lot of us we mix our sap, the
Mhm.
the red and the sugar together. There are a few people who are doing some like walnut syrup.
Oh, wow.
Um, Sometimes they may mix a little bit together. You're not going to get as much sap out of a walnut tree as you will as a maple tree. But walnut syrup actually can go at a higher price. A lot of people sell it for a lot higher because you don't get as much sap from it, and it has a really good taste. Some people like it better than maple syrup. It's really really rich.
Is the
There's a
ratio of sugar to water, in that about the same as like a sugar maple? If you're using sugar as like a benchmark, as the walnut and the red, how does that vary in the actual like content?
so we measure the sugar content in trees with a term called bricks.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so with sugar maples, a lot of time, so I tapped just sugar maples this year, and I did it on campus here at EKU, and a lot of my trees were like 3.2. So that's percentage. So like
Mm-hmm.
3% of that is sugar, and the rest is water. Where a lot of our producers are doing red maples, they're getting like 1.5%.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
The lower the percent, the more sap it takes to make a gallon of syrup. So, for instance, if I've got 3% sugar in my sap, it could take about 35 to 40 gallons. They say about if you got 2%, then it's about 40 gallons. So I was
Mm-hmm.
higher than 2%. So when you're below 2%, it's going to take more gallons. So it's going to take 60 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. Well,
Gotcha.
walnut is even lower than maple trees. So maple has the highest sugar content, but other trees, like because there's not just walnut, you can do sycamore, you can do birch. Um, I'm forgetting another tree, but there's over 30 species of trees that you can make syrup from. But those are kind of your maple, your birch, your walnut, and your sycamore are kind of the ones that people do the most. But again, maple being the most sugar content in the sap, so it takes a lot less.
And all those trees you just mentioned, can the sap be mixed with those, or is there any incompatibilities there that you know of? Like you wouldn't want to, I mean, is there any rules to mixing the sap, or other
Uh,
than purists like Jessica's being like, don't do that?
We don't have a lot of people who, at least in Kentucky, who are doing the other trees. I know in
Yeah.
other states we've been working with, they're doing some research, trying different trees, and I think they may be mixing maybe a little walnut with a
Oh,
little bit of
yeah.
maple, um, but you're changing the taste. They each have their
It
own
does.
taste.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Gotcha.
and I was going to talk about our maple school here in a little bit, but like last year at our maple school, we had somebody came in and talk about the different types of syrup, and we got to taste them. And they each one have their own different taste. One of them had like a
Mm.
licorice taste. I can't remember if that was the birch or the sycamore, but it really had like a strong licorice taste. Um, the walnut again had a really like good like robust they call it taste. And I can't remember one of them just I didn't like the taste of it at all. And I think that might have been the birch. It was like, ooh, that doesn't taste like good syrup.
That would be
But I guess
amazing. That'd be an amazing taste test. I mean, I can just imagine that, just having that luxury to be able to taste different tree species. That's awesome. I mean, I
yeah,
bet that was an awesome experience. Yeah.
it was. I mean, it was a tasty experience.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Well, I'm
I like
imagining
that.
that John comes back for another episode, and we manage to get a little sample of several different
Oh,
species.
Brett, I
That
see
sounds
your
like a
angle,
great
We do a
Brett.
idea.
I
live
see your
sampling.
angle. Yeah. He said,
Live
wait a
taste
minute.
testing.
Wait a
We'll
minute.
make it happen. We'll make it happen. So John, I am the lowest ranking plant nerd on the podcast, including
He
today.
is not.
And so sometimes I have to get these people, and and I have to say, hold on a second. But I am going to ask just one more plant question before we move on to some of these people things, like these organizations and schools and other stuff. What do you have to say about the age of the trees? So either, depending on my conception of time, we either have already talked to, and you've already heard from Chad Nyman up at UK about some of the forestry side of things, and he talked about some of the maple species and older versus younger. Or if you haven't heard in that episode yet, depending on how we organize things, tune into that episode with Chad Nyman. But what's the age, size? How do you, like, if I'm a person who has some wooded property and I'm maybe thinking about maybe tapping some trees, or maybe evaluating whether even I could do a bigger sugar bush to collect sap. What size trees are people typically messing with on this?
That's a good question. So the rule of thumb is it has to have at least a 10-inch size diameter tree. You could tap smaller, but the problem is if you tap smaller, one, you could hurt the tree. But as the tree is growing, you're going to run out of space to tap, around that tree if you start it at a smaller diameter. So the good rule of thumb is 10 inches or bigger. So if it's 10 inches, as the tree is growing, then you'll have more space to keep tapping around the outside of the tree. And the bigger the tree, the more taps you could put in the tree. You could put up to 3 taps in a tree if the tree is over. I don't have my notes from me. It's either 20 or 24 inches. So a really big tree, you could put 3 taps in, but no more than 3, because you put more than 3, again, you could hurt the tree. And then again, you're going to run out of space to tap the tree as well. And the thing is, we don't want to hurt trees. They're going to give us exactly how much sap that they want to give, and then they're going to stop. So you kind of think of like it's the blood of the tree, So we don't want to take too much blood. It's just going to give you what can survive.
I've heard some you said up to 3 taps, depending on the size of the tree, maximum of. But as far as quantity that you may get out of what you would consider a medium-sized tree, I've heard some pretty impressive potential quantities as far as sap that you may get from an individual tree.
Yeah, you can get anywhere from like 5 gallons to 15 gallons in the season.
Pretty incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think, oh, it takes 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon. That's not a very good ratio. But if one tree could give you 15 gallons in a season, you got a couple trees, and you can make a gallon of syrup for your family.
Yeah.
So I've tapped maybe 14 trees on campus this year, and I think I made about 3 gallons of syrup at the end. I probably could have made more. There were some times where I kind of got lazy and I didn't go check my buckets. I didn't empty my buckets because it's tiresome, checking your buckets all the time in the cold and the rain. So unfortunately, we get more rainy winters than we get snowy winters. It seems like. So you think, it'll be fine for a couple of days. Well, you go back and the sap's gone bad. And unfortunately, there's a couple times I should have went the day before and I didn't. So I could have ended up with maybe 4 or 5 gallons of syrup from those 14 trees. And again, people think 5 gallons isn't much, but when you put it in small little bottles, you get a lot of bottles out of 5 gallons of syrup.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than coming and looking down in the bucket and it's cloudy because you've waited too many days, and it is kind of perishable at that stage, isn't it? When it's just sap, it's kind of perishable.
Some people say it kind of smells like stinky feet. So if it smells like your feet, you don't want it.
Bad smell.
As someone who had a gallon of maple syrup in her refrigerator up until last week, I can tell you it is a lot of syrup in a gallon. And as much as I enjoyed that gallon of syrup, I'm glad that the gallon is now out of my refrigerator.
Jessica, did you guys bake with that?
Bake with it, put on pancakes. I've attempted to make maple candies before, but that's one of those things too that, like, if you're not quick, it's go time all of a sudden, to pour.
Brett, I've not had any of these candies. Have you? I've not had any of these candies. So what's up, Jessica? What's
you guys are, if you're a little nicer.
We're lower on the list, but I did get sorted, so I'm
We
going to
have
shut up now. I'm going
demonized
to shut
her
up.
as a
We would
maple
have to
syrup
be
purist on
nice.
this so
I
Okay,
far.
am.
okay.
I have just I'm married into it. So
You
One
have.
comment.
Well, it's an
Well,
We should
exciting
have
a
had
time.
her
couple.
at our maple schools doing these cooking demonstrations the last few years. I
oh,
mean, this is all kind of new
So
information we're
she's
all
sort
learning.
of been holding out on all of
I
us, John, including
I
you.
have.
Yeah,
So wow. I'm going to try to muster up the courage to carry on with this podcast after this, but
I'm at a
I,
loss of words. Yeah.
I'll say, a couple little tidbits from the realm of things that I know. One is that when we talked with Chad, talking about different species of maples, there's different hardness levels within that lumber, and sugar maples are one of the very hardest of maples as far as the hard. You sometimes see in a lumber yard a hard rock maple, those types of things tends to be Acer saccharum, the sugar maple versus a soft maple, which you maybe wouldn't want to use for a cutting board or something like that. And sometimes it's other species, including red maple. But another one is about the prices that we tend to see for maple syrup. So you mentioned a gallon there. We tend to see maple syrup going for between $12 and $20 something for an 8-ounce bottle, and you can do the math on a gallon of that, and it points, I think, to up till now we've been thinking about and talking about buckets and thinking about it sort of as this homesteading or maybe a hobby or whatever thing, but there's some people who are doing it at a little bit bigger scale, and there's people who are thinking about building an industry here in Kentucky, and part of that, I think, is this association that you work with. And I'd love to just hear a little bit more, because as we're talking about all this stuff, I'm trying to remember everything you've said, but then realizing, there's probably some other opportunities to learn and get around with like-minded people who are also as excited as we have been thus far to ask about different species and flow rates and bricks and everything else. But
right.
yeah, so what's going on with the association? I'd love to hear more about that.
Awesome. Yeah. So our association is kind of a young association. People might have been doing this in Kentucky for 20 years or more, but I guess it's probably about 2018, 2017. A few guys in far eastern Kentucky came together and decided, hey, we should make an association. And I think I joined about 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, there was probably about 16, 17 members, a lot of them in Eastern Kentucky. And we've built it up to, I think we're over to 42 members
Oh, wow.
in just 3 years. And I'm still finding out more and more people that making maple syrup. So, we're trying to get our name out there as best as we can to get more members. I think one of the greatest things about our association is we love to tell our story, of course, but we love to share information. Some industries, they like to keep all their you know all their tricks kind of to themselves. How they do this. Like, oh, I'm not going to tell you how I do my make my maple syrup. But we like to share our stories. We like to help each other, and try to mentor each other of how to make a good product across the state. We've got people in far western Kentucky, Callaway County, and we got people in northern, southern, eastern, all over the state. But our association is really about educating, educating the next maple sugar maker. So in October, we're going to actually have 11 different locations across the state where, if you're thinking, man, I'd like to know more about how to make maple syrup, we're going to have 11 locations across the state at extension offices where you can kind of come to a beginner's night, little maple syrup 101 night. Maybe the local extension agent may have maybe making maple syrup, or could be a producer in that county. It's kind of a mix of both. Um, so I've found, I was hoping we'd do 12. I kind of divided Kentucky into 12 districts. Still working on that 12th, but right now we have 11 confirmed places all throughout the month of October. So we hope people will be interested in coming to learn about the process. That's how I got started. We had some an online class, watched an online class, but we want to do it in person so people can come and learn and see all the tools and the tricks, maybe even doing a little taste testing, depending on which location you go to. So that's kind of how we're going to reach people who may not know about maple syrup. And then for people who have been making maple syrup, maybe the moderate or the advanced maple syrup, maker, we're going to have what's called the Kentucky Maple School. We've been doing this for a while. COVID, unfortunately, we had to go to virtual for a few years. So this is be the third year in person, and we have a great turnout. We've had about 60, 70 different producers across the state show up for it. And it's going to be in Clark County this year at the Clark County Extension Office on November the 1st. We're working on times right now, probably start about 9 a.m. In the past, we've had some great speakers. We've had people come from Vermont and Maine, Wisconsin, Northern Ohio, come down to be our presenters. Last year we had this guy called the Maple Dude. That's his business name. He goes by the Maple Dude. He's kind of the social media funny guy of the maple syrup industry. Not everybody may get his humor because we're kind of a small niche group, but those that make maple syrup, we find him pretty funny. But we had him down last year, and that was great to have him come and present and share some of his products. Because you take maple syrup and you can make all kinds of different things. You just replace, that granulated sugar with maple syrup, and you got something that tastes really good and a little bit more healthier for you. So he shared about all the different products he uses his maple syrup for. And then, we bring in the research side to our maple school to help us learn how we can make our process better. And so it's just a great day to get together. We're all spread across the state. We don't really get to see each other that much, but it's that one day we can come together and talk one-on-one and find out what somebody's doing. Everybody's got different techniques, and it's great to learn from each other.
Do you have to be like a member to participate in that? Because I'm kind of excited. I wrote down the date and everything in Clark County, but how do you attend that, or is there a fee? Or
There is, and it's cheap. So it's $25 if you're not a member. If you're a member, we give you a discount, and it's only $15. So we're not one of these big organizations that charges, a crazy amount for a fee. We're just getting started. We want to make sure we can still make it affordable for everybody. So it's $25. We have a website. I believe it is kymaplesyrup.com, and that's where you can register for the Maple School and pay right through that website. We don't have it up yet, but probably by the time this gets posted, it may be available. Sometime at the beginning of October, we'll have the updated registration. I think it still has last year's on there.
I noticed you have a pretty nice and active Facebook page as well, with a lot of great information on there and all of your upcoming events too, for another place to find everything.
Oh, yes. Our secretary, Kaylin, she is a 4-H agent out in Western Kentucky. She's really good at making all the posts and doing all the flyers. I'm not very savvy when it comes to technology or fancy flyers, so I have to rely on her to make the nice flyers so we can get our advertisements out there. But she's working on making this year's advertisements, and we'll get them on Facebook and our website. And we just want everybody to share, through all the extension offices and everything. So we just want to get the word out there.
I cannot imagine the excitement level. I can just see it in my head, almost see it. It's probably like a B group when they get together. They have this kind of energy. I imagine that's you guys when you get together. That you have that opportunity to get together in person. I bet you that is a fun time.
It is. It's almost like a family reunion in a way, where you love all your family. You may have that cousin that's like 3 times removed that you don't want to see. But yeah, it's like a family coming together. You may haven't seen them since last year, but you just love to see those people and sit down and talk and tell stories. So it's a great time. And we get to try a lot of good stuff too. So last year we had maple cotton candy that we made and sent everybody home with. So if you have not had maple cotton candy, that's a whole nother ballgame.
I never would have thought about that. I've never heard of that
amazing.
before. So
I know it is amazing. You use like maple sugar instead of just granulated sugar, so it has that good maple taste. One of our friends from down in Letcher County went up to Maine for a festival and found out about this maple cotton candy and brought the recipe back and shared it with us. So I know a lot of our producers have been selling maple cotton candy at their local farmers market as well. So it's really good.
Yeah, you made me think of something else. My mother-in-law mentioned that at the state fair that she always enjoyed in Vermont getting, they were like maple pops or something like that.
Mm.
So like
Maple
ice
suckers,
cream, like
yeah.
maple ice cream pops kind
I
of.
was just gonna say
Yeah.
ice cream. Who's bringing that? Because I'm behind all of these things we're talking about, 100%.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
One of our producers, he opens up his farm. So one thing I did forget to mention is Kentucky Maple Days, and maybe I come on when it gets closer to that and do another talk.
Oh,
But just want
absolutely.
to put a little disclaimer out there. We have in February called Kentucky Maple Days, where our producers open up their farms and offer tours, so you can come and see how the process is done in person, and buy the product straight from the farm. But one of our producers up in Shelbyville, he has these big ice troughs. So he heats up his maple syrup and then pours it on those ice troughs to make ice troughs. That is a difficult word, and makes like maple taffy. There's like a big French word for it. Don't ask me to say it or pronounce it, but they use that term up there in Maine and Vermont a lot. But he does it here in Shelbyville.
Oh,
It's
wow.
really, really good.
Yeah.
So like a
And you should see
taffy.
everybody's just is crowded around that ice trough, just really, getting as much of that little,
Yeah.
taffy, on their little spoons
Roll it
and
up.
tasting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, Ray, you mentioned the honey side of things, and when the bee people get together, there's a real buzz on the air.
Yeah, there is. I tried not to say that, Brett, but I
and
knew you would.
But I'd imagine there's a similar energy with the maple folks that you would really want to tap into.
Oh,
man.
there you go.
Yeah,
There it
yeah.
is.
He cannot resist. He's pretty sweet about that kind of stuff. So.
Well, that is actually a segue to something that I think is really interesting, which is this idea of like locally producing different products that actually fit into. They're not just. This isn't just like a novelty. Sweeteners are something that we use in baking. There's something that we use in sweetening drinks and all kinds of flavorings and other stuff like that. And I just think that's a really cool aspect. Because you mentioned sorghum. Sorghum is a fairly intensive annual production system, and things like bees and things like maple syrup. To me, there's this element of kind of like it's not passive. There's a lot of activity involved in it, but it's something where you're tapping into. Sorry, that one was unintentional. But you're tapping into this existing aspect of the landscape, and in Kentucky in particular, with so much covered by trees, with a lot of maples out there. I just think that that's a really. I spend a lot of my time thinking about the market side and the consumer side, and I just think that the idea of like even experiencing maple syrup that isn't a maple flavored corn syrup is something that people don't necessarily do, or they don't necessarily get to experience. I think that idea of those maple days, seeing the process, but also even just doing some sampling and taste, offering samples is something that we encourage in the marketing side a lot. I just think it's just a really cool aspect to this, that to be able to supplement our local diets with local products is a really interesting thing.
It totally passes the vibe check. It's kind of like honey, and it's an easy sell, I would think. I mean, because it's got so much positive in my brain, so much positive vibe to that. Like the way I see maple syrup production, it's almost like a romanticized process when I think of Vermont and all the northern states, and Kentucky can do it too. So yeah.
Well, I remember reading. I think it's Laura Ingalls Wilder. I don't know, one of the many pioneer young girl literature that I read in my youth, where they would make maple syrup, and while they were cooking it, they would take it out and throw it into the snow, and it would harden into this little candy that was in process, and they would eat it. And I was just like, oh man, that when you were talking, Jessica, about doing the stuff with the sorghum, and your mother-in-law, I was imagining you as like a little home on the prairie or whatever, little house on the prairie. Well, so John, where would you like to see maple syrup go in the next? You said you've been involved for 3 years. Where might you like to see things go in the next bit? Are you trying to attract more of the backyard homesteading type folks? Are you thinking about something on the commercial side? Like what do you all talk about in the association and in those talks and planning those things?
Honestly, it's not a size thing. We welcome people from the hobbyists to the commercialists. it's just getting more people involved. That's our big thing. For me, uh, we have all these great commodities in Kentucky, and I want maple syrup to be one of those commodities that people talk about. This past year we were a sponsor of the commodity breakfast at the state fair. That was the first time we've ever done that. And so I just want it to be, another one of those commodities that people think about when they think about Kentucky. Everybody always, thinks about beef in Kentucky, which we're never going to be as big as beef. That's a huge commodity, but we should be up there, as an invention at least.
I mean, I'm thinking instead of honey straws, which we got to keep those. I'm thinking maple syrup straws. You see where I'm going with this, Jessica?
Mhm.
I want the honey straws and the maple syrup straws just be side by side. I want all the sweet
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So, this is a question that feel free to tell me I'm crazy or whatever. But one of the things I think that's kind of interesting about in the world of wine or even I guess in the world of maple syrup, maybe I don't know, is the idea of like the place impacting the thing, and like having in the wine world I don't know the word for maple taffy, but I do know this word of terroir, which is the sense of place. And I'm curious, are there any aspects of Kentucky maple syrup that you feel like, you taste it and you can maybe either taste a little bit of a difference, or there's is there something like that, or is it, am I just crazy?
No, you're definitely not crazy. There is definitely, I believe, a different taste in Kentucky maple syrup versus Vermont maple syrup, and I think a lot of it just has to do with our soil here in Kentucky. Um, I may be biased, but I think our syrup has just as great of a taste than up north, and I think it's the soil that we have down here, the limestone maybe that's in our soil. I think it's what gives it its own unique taste down here.
I mean, minerals come out in that sap too. I guess that's one of the things you're kind of filtering out when it goes through the process. But hey, it picks up that stuff too, and so with that stuff probably comes a little bit of geographic difference, I imagine, and
Oh
soil, like
yeah,
you
for
said.
sure.
Yeah, there's got to be some differences, and
Well,
that's Brett, the marketer. He's asking those
well,
Right.
yeah,
questions.
this is something we
Absolutely.
talked about with hops, that like
Hmm.
we want to grow hops here in Kentucky. Okay, great, but you're not going to compete with a commodity production system out of the Yakima Valley out in Oregon or in Washington or wherever on just it's hops. It's a commodity hop. What makes it a little bit special? What makes it a little bit different is something that comes to mind. And you opened a Pandora's box by telling me I'm not crazy, John, because
Oh, you encouraged
I have
that.
sampled.
This
I
is
have
bad.
sampled some
This
maple
is bad.
syrups and from Kentucky, and I do. And other ones too. There's a different like character of what I would describe in my very snooty, wine tasting. The maple syrup doesn't really go around the glass in the same way that a cab
No,
sauv does, but I do perceive a little bit of a minerality that is a pleasant minerality, not like a metallic taste or something that I think is a little bit different, and I think that is cool, and it's something that communicating with chefs or communicating with influencers or other people, there's some potential interest there. I don't know that it's going to appeal to the normal average consumer, but
yeah.
I can tell you if you did a side by side taste sample of well, we don't say trade names, but certain woman shaped bottle that's available through the grocery store, and some of our Kentucky maple syrups, I think you'd win some converts for sure.
Who
Oh,
said
for
it
sure.
Oh,
on
for
campus?
sure.
They said it tastes like Kentucky. I think they were talking about wine. Somebody said it on campus, Brett. They said, "Well, how does this taste?" And then they said it tastes like Kentucky. So, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe it tastes like Kentucky.
I mean the allegedly the horses and the bourbon water is because of our water and our aquifers and our limestone. Why not maple syrup too? Connect it
Exactly.
back to
Yeah.
that aquifer.
It all comes back, and the collection systems and stuff's going to be unique for Kentucky, and just the logistics behind the thing and the trees themselves. It's it's going to be a unique product. I think it's just such a cool product. I mean, it has history here. Didn't you say that earlier? It has history in Kentucky, and I love that you guys are trying to bring that back to the kind of front of people's minds, um, and kind of make it more prominent. Love it, love it, love it
Well, a
with all these
million years
events.
ago, I mean, it was in real time. It was maybe 8 or 9 years ago when you factor in COVID, it was 31 years ago.
That's right.
2016 or so. I actually did a feature on the burgeoning maple syrup association at that time, and we had pictures and people kind of sent in their. It was like maybe 6 or 8 farms that at that point that sent something in, and it was just such a cool thing. And then I got picked up by the UK Ag magazine, and they had the picture on the cover. I can still see the picture of the maple shaped bottle, the little maple leaf shaped bottle. And they did a big feature, and I was like, oh man, this is so cool. And I'm so excited to just hear that you're still going, you're still moving forward. The website looks awesome. Again, I would encourage people to pop back over there. It's kymaplesyrup.com. And give us one more rundown real quick on the upcoming training and learning opportunities, John.
Again, yeah, those the trainings are for a beginner's class, we can kind of call it, is going to start in October. The first one's going to be actually October 1st in Northern Kentucky, and they're kind of scattered out through the whole month. I don't want to list all 12 right now, but
Sure.
they're going to be on our website of where you can go, kind of close to home. We've been doing it the last few years as like the night before our maple school, but this way you don't have to drive as far. You can maybe just drive 30 minutes down the road to the your county beside you to learn how to make maple syrup. So we're really just trying to reach as many people as possible. And then the maple school will be November 1st, and that's a Saturday in Clark County at their extension office.
That's awesome. Well, and also I'll just mention Jessica plugged the Facebook page. 2,000 followers on there, which is awesome. There's a nice picture of John's smiling face at the Kentucky State Fair here on the top of it.
Saw that.
And that Kentucky Maple Syrup Association is the name of their page on Facebook. So you can go over there and and to stay up to date.
It sounds like we need to have you back on for that February event. Brett, Jessica, help me remember. We'd love to have you back on then. I'm just going to speak for the group to learn more about what was at the on-farm program that you guys do, or the feature that you guys do then.
And then after that, we're going to then have another episode in March or April where we have samples of walnut syrup and birch syrup. And we're going to feed a bunch of syrup. Feed a bunch of syrup to Alexis and just watch her kind of spin up.
Like a vortex, yes. It's going to be amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing about the association, about all the stuff that's going on, all those learning opportunities. We'll be sure to put that in the CCD newsletter and other places as well. And thank you all, our listeners, for tuning in today to learn a little bit more about Kentucky maple syrup. If you'd like to hear back from John, hit us with an email. You can email us at hortculturepodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us and message us on Instagram. That's hortculturepodcast just Horticulture Podcast is our handle there. You can also please leave a review and rating of this podcast on whatever app you use to listen. And until next time, thank you, and we'll see you down the road.